The mortar shell screamed through the California morning, and Corporal Lena Phan dove behind a concrete barrier just as shrapnel tore through the air where she'd been standing. Her clipboard of range maintenance schedules scattered across the dirt. 20 feet away, a Navy SEAL collapsed, blood spreading beneath him. His rifle skittered across the gravel toward her boots. Through the smoke and chaos, she heard Commander Mercer's voice crack over the radio. "All units, we're pinned down. Where the hell is our counter-sniper?" The wounded SEAL, Eli Reyes, locked eyes with her, his hand pressed to his bleeding side. "You said you could shoot," he gasped, pushing his MK-11 toward her. "Prove it." "Welcome to my story. Follow me to the end, and drop a comment about where you're watching from so I can see how far this tale has traveled." The morning had started like every other at San Clemente Range complex. Lena Phan arrived at 0530, her maintenance truck loaded with target backers and fresh paper silhouettes. The Pacific fog rolled thick across the coastal range, turning the distant hills into gray shadows. She parked near Range 7, where SEAL Team 5 would run their long-distance qualification course in 3 hours. "Another beautiful day in paradise," she muttered, stepping out into the salt-tinged air. Her Pelican case of tools rattled as she set it down. Range maintenance contractor, not the most glamorous job for someone with a master's degree in ballistics engineering, but it paid the bills while she figured out her next move. The radio on her hip crackled. "Maintenance, this is range control. You've got clearance on 7 through 8. Team 5 pushed their start time to 0900. "Copy that," Lena responded, already unpacking her equipment. She'd been doing this for 8 months now, setting targets, patching berms, collecting brass. The SEALs barely noticed her existence. To them, she was just another civilian contractor, invisible as the morning mist. She worked methodically, replacing the worn backers at the 600-meter line. Her practiced hands moved with unconscious precision, a legacy of 4 years competing in precision rifle series matches before graduate school consumed her life. The familiar weight of target frames, the smell of cordite embedded in the earth, it all brought back memories she'd tried to leave behind. At 0645, the first SEAL vehicles rolled up. Lena recognized Commander Cole Mercer's distinctive stride as he exited the lead Humvee. Iron Hand, the teams called him, a reputation built on 15 years of unflinching combat leadership. His expression today seemed tighter than usual. "Morning, Commander," she called out, but he walked past without acknowledgement. Typical. She was furniture to these guys. Hospital Corpsman First Class Eli Reyes followed, hauling a rifle case and spotting scope. Unlike the others, he nodded in her direction. "Morning, ma'am. Range looking good?" "Always is when I prep it," she replied, allowing herself a small smile. Reyes chuckled. "Confidence. I like that." He paused, studying her for a moment. "You know you hold yourself like a shooter." Before Lena could respond, Mercer's voice cut across the range. "Reyes, we're not here to socialize. Gear up." The SEAL team began their preparation ritual, weapons check, range cards, wind calls. Lena retreated to her truck, content to watch from a distance. She pulled out her worn Kestrel weather meter from her cargo pocket, an old habit. Wind at 7 knots from the southwest, gusting to 12. The coastal thermals would start in an hour, making long shots interesting. At 0715, everything changed. The first mortar round impacted 200 meters beyond the parking area, the explosion echoing off the canyon walls. For a heartbeat, everyone froze, that uniquely human response to the impossible happening. "Incoming!" Mercer's roar shattered the paralysis. The second round landed closer, showering dirt across the vehicles. Then the third, fourth walking in with terrifying precision. Machine gun fire erupted from the eastern ridgeline tracers, cutting through the morning haze. Lena dropped behind her truck as bullets sparked off the hood. Her mind raced, This wasn't random. The timing, the positioning, the coordinated fire. Someone knew exactly when Team 5 would be here, exactly where they'd stage. Through the chaos, she heard Reyes grunt in pain. She looked up to see him stumbling, his left side dark with blood. His rifle fell from nerveless fingers, clattering across the gravel. "Medic!" someone screamed, but their corpseman was already pinned behind a concrete barrier, returning fire. Lena's maintenance clipboard lay scattered in the dirt, today's schedule visible. 0700, SEAL Team 5, Range 7, long-distance qual. The same schedule posted on the base's internal network last night. Another mortar round impacted this one close enough that the concussion wave slapped her face. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Mercer on the radio. "Base, this is Iron Hand troops in contact, grid 346789. We need QRF and close air now." The response crackled back. "Iron Hand QRF is 15 minutes out. Bridge traffic accident has them bottled up." 15 minutes. In a firefight that was a lifetime. Lena saw Reyes crawling toward his rifle, leaving a blood trail. Without thinking, she sprinted from cover, sliding to her knees beside him. "Get down, you idiot!" he gasped. She grabbed his rifle, a MK11 Mod Zero glass-bedded Night Force scope. The weight felt right familiar. "Where's the shooter?" she asked. "Eastern Ridge, maybe 650 meters. There's at least 3 of them." Reyes pressed his hand harder against his side. "You said something about being a shooter once, right? Back when we were talking, something like that." Lena's fingers found the scope's parallax adjustment instinctively. "Then shoot back!" Mercer's voice cut through the firefight. He'd seen her grab the weapon. "Or give it to someone who can—" Lena brought the rifle up and suddenly 8 months of invisibility evaporated. Through the scope, the world simplified into wind distance and geometry. She spotted muzzle flash 668 meters, according to the reticle's male measurements. A shooter tucked behind a boulder, only his rifle and shoulder exposed. From her pocket, she pulled a strip of mylar, part of her target repair kit. She let it flutter, watching its angle. The kestrel in her other pocket read 7.3 knots, but the mylar told a different story. Mechanical wind was one thing, but the canyon's Venturi effect would add at least 3 knots of value at that distance. "Any day now," Mercer shouted. She dialed 6. 8 mils of elevation, held 1.2 mils right for wind. The trigger broke at exactly 4.5 pounds, she knew, without thinking about it. The rifle pushed back into her shoulder with familiar authority. Through the scope, she watched the shooter jerk and fall backward. His rifle tumbled down the rocky slope. The range went quiet for a heartbeat. "Holy shit," Reyes breathed. Lena was already tracking right. Another muzzle flash, this one at 710 meters higher up the ridge. She caught the Mirage running right to left, across a flat rock face, indicating a full-value crosswind in the middle trajectory. The shooter was partially concealed behind scrub brush, trying to relocate after seeing his partner fall. She adjusted her hold, controlled her breathing, and pressed the trigger between heartbeats. The bullet cut through the thin branches and found its mark. The second shooter crumpled. "Contact right!" someone yelled. A technical truck had appeared on the access road, a heavy machine gun mounted in its bed. The gunner was swiveling toward their position. "Light it up," Mercer commanded, but their return fire was scattered ineffective at 400 meters with M4 carbines. Lena swung the rifle smoothly, tracking the vehicle. Through the scope, she could see the driver's face, young, terrified, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. The gunner was older professional, already walking bursts toward their position. She had a clear shot on both men. Instead, she dropped her aim point to the truck's radiator and fired. Steam erupted from the hood. She worked the bolt fired again, this time into the front tire. The truck lurched to a stop, the engine dying with a rattling cough. The gunner struggled to maintain his aim from the now stationary platform, making him an easy target for the SEALs' combined fire. He dove from the truck bed and ran. "Ceasefire!" Mercer called out, as the attackers pulled back. "They're withdrawing." But Lena wasn't watching the runners. Her scope tracked to a position 850 meters out extreme range for the 308. She'd caught a glint but wrong angle for optics. It was a phone or radio, and whoever held it was directing fire. "Spotter," she said to Reyes. "He's calling in the mortars." Where, Reyes had dragged himself to his spotting scope despite his wound. "Palm Grove, 11 o'clock. See where the fronds make a V shape." "Negative, I've got nothing." "Wait." Reyes adjusted his focus. "There, he's barely visible. That's got to be 850, maybe 900 meters. You can't make that shot with a 308 in this wind." But Lena was already doing the math. At that distance, the bullet would be transonic destabilizing as it dropped below the speed of sound. The wind would have nearly 7 feet of drift to account for. She needed to aim at empty air and trust physics. Another mortar round impacted closer this time. They were walking the fire in, and the spotter was the key. "The palm fronds," she said suddenly. "They're creating a wind tunnel effect. Look at how they're moving differently than the trees around them." She pulled out her kestrel, but then ignored its reading. Instead, she watched a piece of paper, part of her scattered schedule, tumble across the ground. It danced and swirled, showing the true wind at ground level. But 20 feet up where her bullet would arc the wind would be different. "This is insane," Reyes muttered, but he was already calling wind for her. "Mirage is boiling straight up at 400, running left to right at 600. Lena found something else, a small pennant on a radio antenna at mid-range. It fluttered, then went slack, then fluttered again. Gust pattern. She started counting. 7 seconds between gusts. She dialed elevation until she ran out of adjustment, then held over another 2 mils. The wind call was pure instinct, now 4.5 mils right, maybe 5. "Sending," she whispered, and pressed the trigger during a lull between gusts. The flight time seemed eternal. Through the scope, she watched the spotter lift his radio to call in another adjustment. Then his head snapped back, and he tumbled from his concealed position. The radio fell into the sand. The mortars stopped. "Jesus Christ," Mercer said, appearing beside them. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Before Lena could answer, the radio crackled with an impossible message. "Iron Hand, this is base. Be advised we're showing your training evolution scheduled to commence at 0900. Phase 2 of force-on-force exercise, opposing force, provided by contractor team. Please confirm safety protocols are in place." Mercer grabbed the radio. "Base, this is Iron Hand. We are taking actual fire. This is not an exercise." "Iron Hand, please authenticate. Your schedule shows—" "The schedule," Lena said suddenly. "Commander who has access to the training schedule." Mercer's face went pale. "Operations range control and—" He stopped. "Son of a bitch. Someone's using our own schedule against us." Reyes groaned, trying to sit up. "That's why they knew exactly when we'd be here. Down to the minute." Another voice came over the radio, not base this time. The accent was distinctly foreign, but the words were chillingly familiar. "Commander Mercer training block." Charlie confirmed. "Commencing Phase 2 as scheduled. Your QRF is delayed by traffic also as scheduled. Your alternate routes are observed. Surrender now, and we guarantee prisoner treatment according to Geneva Convention." "How the hell do they have our comm freak?" someone shouted. Lena's mind raced. This wasn't just an ambush. Someone had given the attackers their entire operational playbook. Every contingency, every response plan, every backup route. "Commander," she said, "they know your standard operating procedures. You need to do something unexpected. Like what? Mercer demanded. Like letting a civilian maintenance worker handle your counter-sniper operations, Reyes said with a pained laugh. More vehicles appeared on the access roads, 3 trucks moving in coordination. Lena tracked them through her scope, noting their spacing, their speed. Professional. These weren't random insurgents. They're going to box us in, she said. Force us into the kill zone for the mortars. Not if we move first. Mercer was already issuing orders. Daniels, take 3 men and flank left. Martinez, secure that hillock for overwatch. Commander, Lena interrupted. That hillock is pre-registered. Look. She pointed to a small marker barely visible. Range marker for indirect fire. They want you to go there. Mercer stared at her. How do you... Because I maintain this range. I know every marker, every distance, every backstop. She ejected the magazine from the MK-11 counting rounds. I've got 6 shots left. There's a shooter at 500 meters, 2 o'clock, setting up overwatch. Another in that white van, yeah, the one that looks civilian. And there's someone on the roof of the range tower. That's our own tower. Not anymore. She was already moving low and fast to a better position. The SEALs watched half in amazement and half in disbelief as this woman they'd ignored for 8 months moved like she'd been born to it. The shooter at 500 meters was cocky, exposed as he set up his rifle. Lena's shot caught him center mass, spinning him off the rock he'd been using as support. The van's windows were tinted, but she could see movement inside. Instead of guessing, she put a round through the engine block, a mobility kill. The door burst open and 2 men scrambled out right into the SEALs' fields of fire. Tower! She called out, already tracking up. The angle was severe, the distance moderate, but the real problem was the wind. At that height, it would be running completely different than at ground level. She found a flag on the tower, not the American flag, which flew every day, but a small weather flag she'd installed herself last month. It streamed straight out, showing wind at 15 knots at that elevation. Mental calculation. 378 meters distance, 45-degree up angle, 15-knot full-value wind at target level, but only 7 knots at trajectory midpoint. The bullet would actually curve in flight. This is impossible, someone muttered. Lena exhaled slowly and fired. The man on the tower jerked and fell forward, his rifle clattering down the metal roof before tumbling to the ground below. 2 rounds left, she announced, as casual as calling out a lunch order. That's when the world exploded again. The mortars resumed, but from a different position. Machine gun fire erupted from 3 points simultaneously. And above it all, that accented voice on the radio, Phase 2 initiated. All units check your sectors. The woman is priority target. They knew about her. Somehow they'd been watching, and now they knew. We need to move, Mercer shouted. Base, where's my goddamn QRF? 8 minutes, Iron Hand. Bridge is clearing now. 8 minutes. The enemy had reinforcements arriving. The mortar fire was getting more accurate. And somewhere in this chaos, there was a traitor who'd sold them out. Lena looked at the wounded SEAL beside her. Reyes was pale, but alert, his hand steady on the spotting scope, despite the blood soaking his shirt. You see that? He asked, pointing to a subtle heat shimmer 700 meters out. Vehicle engine, she confirmed. Hidden in the ravine. That's their command post. One problem, Reyes said. You'd have to skip the bullet off that rock face to get the angle. Nobody can make that shot. Lena chambered her second to last round. You want a spot for me, or you want to keep telling me what's impossible? Despite his pain, Reyes grinned. Call the wind dust line. Dust line. You need a call sign if you're going to keep showing up my team. She studied the terrain through the scope. The bullet would need to impact the angled rock at exactly the right point to deflect into the hidden vehicle. Too high, and it would skip over. Too low, and it would fragment. The margin for error was maybe 6 inches at that distance. "This is crazy," Mercer said, watching her calculate. "No one makes trick shots in combat." "It's not a trick," Lena replied. "It's geometry, and geometry doesn't care about combat." She adjusted for the deflection angle, adding in wind drift the Coriolis effect at that distance, and the fact that the bullet would lose velocity after the skip. Her hold point was nearly 5 feet above and 3 feet left of where she wanted the bullet to ultimately impact. The mortar team fired again, the rounds walking closer. In 30 seconds, they'd have the range. "Sending," she whispered. The bullet sparked off the rock face in a shower of fragments. Through Reyes's spotting scope, they watched the hidden vehicle's windshield spiderweb. The engine died. Men scattered from the concealed position, several limping from fragment wounds. "Target disrupted," Reyes reported, then added with disbelief, "She actually did it." 1 round left. That's when Lena noticed something wrong. A helicopter approaching from the south, running the correct approach pattern for their base, squawking the right IFF codes. But the sound? "That's not one of ours," she said suddenly. "Listen to the rotor noise." Mercer was already on the radio. "Base confirm inbound helo from the south." "Negative, Iron Hand. No air assets launched. QRF is still ground movement only." The helicopter was 2 minutes out. If it was hostile, they were about to be in serious trouble. But Lena had already swung the rifle toward a different target. "What are you doing?" Mercer demanded. She was aiming at their own range control tower, specifically at a small dish antenna she'd never seen before. It hadn't been there yesterday. "That's how they're spoofing your IFF codes. They've got a relay on your own infrastructure." "You can't shoot that it's base property." "Would you rather explain paperwork or casualties?" Her last round was perfect, punching through the dish's feed horn. Sparks flew, and immediately the approaching helicopter's IFF codes went red on everyone's tactical displays. "Hostile aircraft inbound," Mercer roared. "Take cover." But the helicopter was already banking away the pilot, realizing their deception had failed. Anti-aircraft missiles from the base's defense systems were locking on. The aircraft dove behind the ridgeline and disappeared. Lena set down the empty rifle with something almost like regret. "I'm out. Here." One of the SEALs, Daniels, handed her his rifle. "You seem to know what to do with it better than me." But before she could respond, vehicles appeared on the access road. Friendly vehicles. The QRF had finally broken through. "About damn time," Mercer muttered. The firefight intensified as the quick reaction force engaged. The attackers were pulling back now, their carefully planned ambush disrupted. But as Lena watched their withdrawal, she noticed something troubling. "Commander," she said, "they're not routing. This is organized. They're falling back to prepared positions." "How do you know that?" "Because they're moving to Range 9. I was out there yesterday. Someone's been digging fighting positions, and I was told it was for next week's exercise." Mercer's expression darkened. "Show me." She pulled out her phone, showing him photos she'd taken. "I document any changes to the ranges for maintenance reports. These positions were dug Tuesday night. But your exercise isn't scheduled until next Wednesday." "Son of a bitch!" Mercer grabbed his radio. "All units hostile fallback positions at Range 9. Do not pursue. Repeat, do not pursue." The QRF commander's voice crackled back. "Iron Hand, we've got them on the run. We can end this." "Negative. It's a trap. They've had days to prepare those positions." Through the scope of Daniels's rifle, Lena watched the attackers reach their prepared positions. They were setting up crew-served weapons, expecting pursuit. When it didn't come, she could almost see their confusion. "Ma'am," Reyes said, his voice weaker now, "I think you just saved a lot of lives." The immediate threat was receding, but questions remained. Who had sold them out? How deep did this go, and why had the attackers known to target her specifically once she'd engaged? As the medics finally reached Reyes and began working on him, Lena heard something on the tactical radio that made her blood run cold. It was Lieutenant Dana Keene from Range Operations, and she was saying, "All units stand down. Training exercise complete. Repeat, this was a scheduled force-on-force training exercise." "Bullshit," Mercer roared into his handset. "Keene, what the hell are you talking about?" "Commander, check your updated schedule. This was a classified readiness test. Opposing force was contracted through..." Her transmission cut to static. Then another voice, the same accented one from before. "Thank you, Lieutenant, for your cooperation. Asset secured. Extracting now." "Keene!" Mercer shouted. "Keene, respond!" But there was only silence. Lena's mind raced. Lieutenant Dana Keene, Range Operations Scheduling Officer. She had access to everything. Schedules, radio frequencies, personnel movements. The perfect inside source. "Commander," she said urgently, "if Keene's with them, they know your response protocols. They know where your command post will relocate, where your casualties will evac to everything." Mercer was already thinking the same thing. "We need to." The explosion cut him off. Far to the south, a pillar of smoke rose from the direction of the base's alternate command post. Then another explosion, this one at the designated casualty collection point. "They're hitting everywhere we're supposed to go," someone said in disbelief. Lena grabbed Mercer's arm. "You need to break pattern. Do everything opposite of your standard procedures." "That goes against your procedures have been compromised. They're using your own playbook against you." Mercer stared at her for a long moment. Around them, SEALs were looking to their commander for orders. 8 months of being invisible, and now she was telling one of the Navy's most experienced special operators how to run his team. "You're right," he said finally. Then louder, "All units implement random protocol. No standard movements. No designated rally points. Squad leaders, you make the calls. Assume all preset positions are compromised." It was chaos, but organized chaos. The SEALs adapted instantly their training, allowing them to improvise effectively. Meanwhile, Lena was thinking about Keene. "She knew I'd be here," she said suddenly. "Yesterday she asked me specifically to prep Range 7 early. Said there was a schedule change." "She set you up?" "No, she set you up. I was just supposed to be collateral damage." Lena's jaw tightened. "But she didn't know I could shoot." The sound of helicopters filled the air, multiple aircraft approaching fast. This time they were definitely friendly. Apache gunships appeared over the Ridge weapons pods, bristling. "Iron Hand, this is Hammer Flight. We're on station. Where do you want the pain delivered?" Mercer looked at Lena. "You seem to see things we miss. Where are they?" She closed her eyes, thinking. If she were running this operation, where would she exfiltrate from? It had to be close enough to reach quickly, but far enough to avoid the immediate response. It had to have good access roads, but also concealment. "The old quarry," she said suddenly. 2 clicks northwest. It's officially closed, but I've seen tire tracks there recently. Hammerflight, check the quarry grid, 339-812. Roger, Ironhand. Moving to... Wait, we've got vehicles. Multiple vehicles. And hostile personnel loading something into a helicopter. Engaging now. The distant thunder of 30mm cannons rolled across the range. Through the borrowed rifle's scope, Lena could see smoke rising from the quarry's direction. Ironhand Hammer Flight. Hostile helicopter destroyed on the ground, counting at least 15 enemy KIA. But you need to see this. There's someone here looks like friendly personnel. female Navy uniform. "Keen," Mercer growled. "Do not approach her. She may be—" "Sir, she's signaling for help. Appears to be restrained." Lena felt something twist in her stomach. It was too convenient, too perfect. "It's a setup," she said. "She's bait." "Or she's a hostage," one of the SEALs argued. "Commander," Lena said, "ask yourself, how did they know exactly when to grab her? How did she transmit that message if she was already captured? She's in on it." Mercer was torn. His training said never leave anyone behind, but his instincts were screaming danger. "Hammer Flight, maintain overwatch but do not approach. Ground units will assess." "Roger, standing by." Reyes, despite being strapped to a stretcher, now spoke up. "The maintenance worker's been right about everything else, Commander." Mercer nodded slowly. "We do this carefully, full tactical approach. Assume it's a trap until proven otherwise." As the SEALs prepared to move out, Lena felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Mercer. "You're coming with us," he said. "I'm just a civilian contractor." "No," he said firmly. "You're the only person here who seems to understand what's really happening, and right now that makes you the most valuable asset I have." She looked at the rifle in her hands, then at the blood on the ground where Reyes had been lying, then at the faces of the SEALs around her. 8 months of being invisible, and now she was at the center of something that went far deeper than a simple ambush. "One condition," she said. "Name it. When this is over, someone explains to me how a scheduling officer ends up coordinating with foreign operatives to attack a SEAL team." Mercer's expression was grim. "When this is over, I have a feeling that's going to be the least of our questions." As they moved out, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that everything so far had been just the opening moves. The real game was just beginning, and somewhere out there, Lieutenant Dana Keene was waiting, playing a role in a drama that none of them fully understood yet. The coastal fog was lifting now, revealing the full scope of the battlefield. Smoke rose from multiple positions. Emergency vehicles were racing in all directions. And in the middle of it all, a maintenance contractor who just wanted to fix target stands was walking with Navy SEALs toward what everyone knew was probably a trap. But as Lena checked the ammunition for her borrowed rifle, she realized something: she wasn't invisible anymore. For better or worse, she was part of this now. The quarry was 2 kilometers away. Whatever waited there would change everything. The morning that had started with routine maintenance was about to become something none of them could have predicted. As they moved through the scarred landscape of the range, Lena heard the radio crackle one more time. It was a different voice now, older, authoritative. "All stations, this is Admiral Preston. I'm declaring a full base lockdown. No one in or out. Someone inside our perimeter did this, and by God, we're going to find out who." Beside her, Mercer muttered, "Now the brass shows up." But Lena was thinking about something else. If Keene was the inside source, she wasn't working alone. Someone had to have recruited her, funded this operation, provided the intelligence and resources. This wasn't just about one attack on one SEAL team. This was bigger. Much bigger. And as they approached the quarry where Keene waited, Lena had the unsettling feeling that they were all still playing by someone else's rules. The attack, the response, even her involvement. What if it was all part of the plan? She tightened her grip on the rifle and kept walking. Sometimes the only way to spring a trap was to walk into it with your eyes open. The quarry loomed ahead, and with it, answers that would shake the foundation of everything they thought they knew about operational security. The morning's events had been just the beginning. The quarry stretched before them like an open wound in the earth, its limestone walls scarred from decades of blasting. Lena moved with the SEALs in tactical formation, her borrowed rifle feeling increasingly natural in her hands. The morning sun had burned through the coastal fog, revealing every detail of the potential killing ground ahead. Movement 10 o'clock. Daniels whispered, his rifle tracking to a cluster of abandoned equipment near the quarry's edge. Lena studied the area through her scope. Something was wrong with the shadows. They fell at the wrong angle, as if the equipment had been moved recently. "Those excavators," she said quietly to Mercer. "They weren't there last week." "You're sure? I document everything that might affect range safety. Those are new." She adjusted her scope's focus. "And see the hydraulic lines, they're still gleaming. Someone positioned those for cover." Mercer hand-signaled his team to halt. The SEALs melted into concealment among the rocks and scrub brush weapons covering multiple sectors. Above them, the Apache gunships maintained their orbit rotors, beating a steady rhythm. "Hammer Flight, this is Iron Hand. We're seeing prepared positions. Can you give us thermal?" "Roger, Iron Hand. Scanning now. Multiple heat signatures around the target building. Count 8, maybe 9 hostiles. The female in Navy uniform is stationary in the central structure. She's not moving at all." Lena felt that twist in her stomach again. Through her scope, she could just make out the building, an old quarry office that should have been empty for years. But fresh tire tracks led to its door, and she caught the glint of something metallic in an upper window. "Sniper," she breathed, just as the shot cracked overhead. The team dove for better cover as more shots followed, disciplined and measured. Not random fire. Someone was trying to pin them down in specific positions. "They're hurting us," Lena realized, "pushing us toward—" The explosion erupted to their right, exactly where they would have moved for better cover. Rock and dirt rained down, and through the dust she heard engines starting. Multiple vehicles closing fast. "Contact right!" Martinez shouted, his saw opening up on 2 technicals racing toward them from concealed positions. But Lena was watching something else through her scope. In the quarry office window, she'd caught a glimpse of Lieutenant Keene. The woman was definitely restrained, hands behind her back, but her lips were moving, counting. "She's timing something," Lena said urgently. "Commander, she's—" The ground beneath them shifted, a muffled detonation somewhere deep in the quarry's tunnel system. Then another. The limestone walls began to crack, sheets of rock starting to calve off. "They're collapsing the quarry," Mercer roared. "Everyone back, move!" But as they tried to retreat, more vehicles appeared behind them. They were boxed in the trap, finally sprung. The SEALs fought with controlled fury, but they were outnumbered, and the enemy had prepared this ground for days. Lena dropped 2 attackers at 400 meters, her shots precise despite the chaos. But for every one they stopped, 2 more seemed to appear. Then she noticed something, a pattern in their movement. They were avoiding certain areas, specific paths through the quarry. "IEDs," she said to Mercer between shots. "They've mined everything except their approach routes." "How does that help us?" She pointed to a dump truck parked near the quarry's entrance. "That truck, if we can get it moving, we can use it to clear a path. It's 200 meters of open ground. Not if we use their own smoke." She'd spotted the smoke grenades on the attackers' vests. "They planned to use it to cover their extraction. We turn it against them." Mercer made the call. "Daniels, Martinez, lay down suppressing fire. Thompson, you're the fastest. I'll go," Lena interrupted. "Like hell you will." "Commander, with respect, Thompson doesn't know construction equipment. I do. I maintain this range. Remember, I drive these machines every day." The argument was cut short by another explosion. The quarry office partially collapsed, and through the dust, Keene's voice suddenly echoed from hidden speakers. "Commander Mercer, you have 5 minutes before the main charges detonate. Surrender now, and I guarantee safe passage for your men." "She's not a hostage," one of the SEALs spat. "She's running this show." Lena made her decision. Before Mercer could stop her, she pulled the pins on 3 smoke grenades from a fallen attacker and hurled them in sequence, creating a corridor of gray concealment. Then she ran. Bullets snapped past, but the smoke and suppressing fire from the seals kept most of the enemy's heads down. She slid behind the truck's massive tire as rounds sparked off its steel bed. The door was locked, but she'd learned long ago that construction equipment keys were almost universally interchangeable. She pulled her maintenance keyring out, found the Catmaster, and the engine rumbled to life. "Iron Hand, what the hell is she doing?" The Apache pilot's voice crackled over the radio. "Improvising," Mercer replied. Lena slammed the truck into gear and floored it toward the SEAL's position. The vehicle's mass made it unstoppable, and she heard the crack of rifles as the enemy tried desperately to disable it. The windshield starred and cracked, but the old truck kept moving. She spun the wheel hard, bringing the truck sideways between the SEALs and the enemy positions, creating instant hard cover. "Load up!" she shouted through the broken window. The team didn't need to be told twice. They bounded into the truck bed, laying down disciplined fire as they moved. Mercer was the last aboard, and as he climbed in, Lena saw movement in her side mirror. A rocket-propelled grenade tracking toward them. She yanked the wheel left and accelerated. The RPG sailed past, detonating against the quarry wall behind them. But the turn had taken them off the safe path into the mined areas. "Stop!" Mercer shouted, but Lena had already seen what he'd seen, disturbed earth ahead, the telltale sign of buried IEDs. She slammed on the brakes, the truck sliding to a halt mere feet from the first device. Through the cracked windshield, she could see the detonator wire running across their path. They were trapped between the mines and the pursuing enemy. "Bail out!" someone shouted. But Lena was focused on something else. The wire ran to a junction box mounted on a wooden post, standard electrical equipment that she'd installed herself months ago for range operations. "Cover me," she said, dropping from the cab. "Are you insane?" Daniels grabbed her arm. "That's my junction box. I know how it's wired." She pulled her Leatherman from her pocket. 60 seconds. The SEALs laid down a brutal base of fire, keeping the enemy's heads down, while Lena sprinted to the box. Her hands worked from memory-stripping wires, rerouting connections. The enemy had piggybacked their detonation system onto the range's electrical grid, but they'd made a mistake. They'd used the ground circuit as their trigger line. She pulled 2 wires, crossed them, and the entire IED network went dead, their circuits shorted to ground. "Path's clear!" she shouted, already running back to the truck. But as she reached for the door handle, she heard the distinctive crack of a precision rifle. The round caught her in the shoulder, spinning her to the ground. Pain exploded through her upper body, hot and sharp. "Sniper 11 o'clock high!" someone shouted. Through her tears, Lena saw the shooter, a professional, already working his bolt for a follow-up shot. She was in the open, no cover, her rifle fallen out of reach. Then Reyes's voice crackled over someone's radio. He was still back at the original ambush site, wounded, but monitoring the tactical net. "Dust line roll left on my mark. Mark." She rolled, trusting the wounded SEAL's eyes. The sniper's second shot sparked off the ground where she'd been lying. "Thompson, smoke out," Mercer commanded. The grenade popped, obscuring the sniper's view. Strong hands grabbed Lena, dragging her behind the truck's wheel. "You're hit," Mercer said, already applying pressure to the wound. "I've had worse," she lied through gritted teeth. The shoulder felt like it was on fire, but she could still move her fingers. The bullet had missed the bone. "Can you drive? Do I have a choice?" He helped her into the cab, and she bit back a scream as she reached for the gear shift with her injured arm. The truck lurched forward, building speed toward the quarry's exit. Behind them, Keen's voice echoed again from the speakers. "Detonation in 2 minutes. This is your last chance, Commander." "Hammer flight," Mercer called. "Can you hit that office building?" "Negative, Iron Hand. The female friendly is still inside. ROE says she's not a friendly," Lena shouted loud enough for the radio to pick up. She'd just realized something. "The detonation timer, she's not planning to die here. She's got an escape route." Through her pain, she forced herself to think. Where would it be? The quarry had been abandoned for years, but she'd explored it during her range surveys. There were old maintenance tunnels, drainage systems. The water tunnel, she said suddenly. Northwest corner. It leads to the ocean. She's going to blow the charges and escape through the tunnel while everyone thinks she died in the collapse. Mercer didn't hesitate. Hammerflight, check the beach grid, 335817. Look for boats or extraction assets. Roger, Ironhand. Breaking off to... Wait, we've got a speedboat holding position just offshore. 2 personnel visible. The truck burst out of the quarry entrance, and Lena immediately cranked the wheel hard right. The vehicle tilted dangerously, but held. Behind them, the first of the main charges detonated. The ground shook, and in the mirrors she watched the quarry's walls begin to collapse inward. Martinez Johnson, get to that tunnel exit, Mercer ordered. Don't let Keene escape. 2 SEALs jumped from the moving truck, sprinting toward the coastline. But Lena was fighting to maintain control. The steering was sluggish, and she realized one of the enemy rounds had damaged the power steering lines. Fluid was spraying across the windshield. I'm losing steering, she warned. How far to hard cover? Half a click to the range maintenance building. We'll never make it. Mercer was watching their 6. 3 vehicles were in pursuit, gaining fast. Lena's shoulder screamed as she fought the wheel, but her mind was still working. The maintenance building had something the enemy wouldn't expect, the range's automated target system. She'd upgraded it herself last month. Commander, I need 30 seconds in that building. To do what? To turn this range into a weapon. He looked at her, bloody, half-conscious from pain, but her eyes were sharp with purpose. Do it. The truck slammed into the maintenance building's fence, tearing through it. Lena killed the engine and stumbled out, her vision graying at the edges. Mercer's arm around her waist was the only thing keeping her upright as they rushed inside. The control panel was exactly as she'd left it. She input her maintenance override code, fingers slippery with blood, and accessed the target system's control program. But instead of launching the standard pop-up targets, she redirected every pneumatic ram in the system to maximum pressure and set them to random activation. What does that do? Mercer asked. Watch. The pursuing vehicles entered the range, and suddenly the ground erupted around them. Steel target frames launched from hidden positions at 200 psi, slamming into vehicles, shattering windshields. One truck hit a launching plate head-on and flipped. Another swerved to avoid a pop-up barrier and crashed into a concrete backstop. Holy shit, someone breathed. But Lena wasn't done. She accessed the range's lighting system, the powerful floods used for night training. She'd installed them with motorized mounts for easy adjustment. Now she turned them into weapons, directing their 10,000 lumen beams directly into the remaining attackers' faces. Blinded and disoriented, the enemy fighters stumbled from their vehicles straight into the SEALs' controlled fire. The fight was over in seconds. Clear, Daniels called out. Lena slumped against the control panel, her strength finally failing. The shoulder wound was worse than she'd thought. Blood had soaked through her shirt and was pooling on the floor. Medic, Mercer shouted, but their corpsman was still back at the initial ambush site. Through increasingly blurry vision, Lena saw something on the security monitor. The feed from the beach camera showed Martinez and Johnson arriving at the tunnel exit just as Keene emerged, soaking wet and no longer playing the victim. She had a pistol in her hand. Commander, Lena mumbled, pointing weakly at the screen. They watched as Keene raised her weapon, but Martinez was faster. His shot caught her in the leg, dropping her to the sand. Johnson kicked the pistol away and zip-tied her hands. The speedboat offshore immediately gunned its engines and fled. Hammerflight, prosecute that boat, Mercer ordered. With pleasure, Ironhand. The Apache's cannon spoke once, and the boat disintegrated in a spray of water and debris. Lena felt herself sliding down the wall, leaving a blood trail on the white paint. Someone was applying pressure to her shoulder. Someone else was calling for immediate medevac. but it all seemed very far away. "Hey, stay with us," Mercer said, his face swimming in and out of focus. "You don't get to check out now. We still need to know how you learned to shoot like that." She tried to answer, but darkness was creeping in from the edges. The last thing she heard was a familiar voice on the radio, Reyes still coordinating from his stretcher. "Dust line saved our asses. Someone make sure she knows that." Then the darkness took her. She woke to the rhythmic beating of helicopter rotors. A flight medic was adjusting an IV in her arm, and the shoulder was wrapped in heavy bandages. Through the window, she could see the Pacific coastline sliding by below. "Welcome back," the medic said. "You lost a lot of blood, but you're stable. We'll have you at Balboa Medical in 10 minutes. The team, all alive thanks to you. That was some impressive shooting out there." Lena closed her eyes, but opened them again when she heard Mercer's voice. He was sitting across from her, still in his battle-torn gear, talking on a satellite phone. "Yes, sir. Keen is in custody. No, sir, she's not talking yet. The maintenance contractor, sir, she's the only reason we're alive. Yes, sir, I'm recommending her for civilian recognition." He ended the call and noticed she was awake. "How you feeling? Like I got shot?" "Yeah, that'll happen when you play hero." His expression softened. "That was incredible work out there. Where'd you learn all that?" Lena considered how to answer. The truth was complicated years of competitive shooting, a ballistics engineering degree. She'd never used a father who'd taught her to see patterns others missed before he died in Afghanistan. But before she could speak, Mercer's phone rang again. His expression darkened as he listened. "You're sure, Jesus Christ?" He looked at Lena. They searched Keen's quarters. She had detailed files on every SEAL operation for the last 6 months. Training schedules, personnel files, even our family's information. How long has she been compromised? That's the million-dollar question. But here's the kicker, she had a file on you too. Your whole history, including stuff that's not in any official database. Lena felt cold despite the warm cabin. "What kind of stuff?" "Your father's real job, for one. He wasn't just Army ordnance, was he?" She was quiet for a moment. "No, he was Defense Intelligence Agency, specialized in foreign weapons systems. And they knew that. They knew about your degree, your competition, shooting everything. You weren't collateral damage, Lena. You were specifically supposed to be there at that range at that time." "That doesn't make sense. Why would they want—" "Because someone wanted to test something. Either you or our response to an instant threat, or both." Mercer leaned forward. "This wasn't just an attack. It was an evaluation." The helicopter was descending now, the medical center's landing pad visible ahead. But Lena's mind was racing. An evaluation of what? And by whom? Commander, she said. Keen couldn't have done this alone. The resources, the intelligence, the coordination, this took months of planning and serious backing. Agreed, which is why this isn't over. He pulled out a business card. "When you're healed up, there are people who want to talk to you. Important people." She looked at the card. Naval Criminal Investigative Service, Special Operations Division. "They want to offer me a job. They want to offer you a chance to help us figure out how deep this goes. Because if Keen was able to compromise us this badly, there are others. And we need someone who can think like they do." The helicopter touched down, and immediately medical personnel swarmed aboard. As they prepared to move her, Mercer grabbed her good hand. "You saved my entire team today. That's a debt I can't repay. But maybe I can start by making sure you're not invisible anymore." As they wheeled her into the medical center, Lena caught a glimpse of herself in a window's reflection, blood-stained, exhausted, but alive. 8 months of being nobody, and in one morning, everything had changed. But Mercer was right. This wasn't over. Keen was just one piece of a larger puzzle. Someone had orchestrated this entire event, had known exactly where to place everyone, including her. The question was, had she passed their test or failed it? 2 hours later, as surgeons worked to repair her shoulder, Lieutenant Dana Keene sat in an interrogation room at the base, her leg bandaged, her hands cuffed to the table. She hadn't said a word since her capture, but she kept checking the clock on the wall. At exactly 1300 hours, she spoke for the first time. Phase 3 initiated. The interrogators looked at each other in confusion. "What's Phase 3? Keene smiled. "You'll find out in about 30 seconds. That's when the lights went out across the entire base. Emergency generators kicked in, but the damage was done. In the confusion, every classified computer system had been accessed, their data copied and transmitted to locations unknown. By the time power was restored, one thing was clear: the attack on the range had never been the real objective. It had been a diversion designed to pull every security asset to one location, while the real infiltration happened electronically. And at the center of it all was a simple question: why had they wanted Lena Phan there? What was special about a maintenance contractor with a hidden past? The answers would come, but not quickly, and not without cost. The morning's battle had been just the opening gambit in a much larger game. In her hospital bed, Lena stared at the NCIS card, knowing that accepting their offer would mean stepping fully into a world of shadows and deception. But she also knew she didn't really have a choice. They'd already marked her, already identified her as a player in their game. She thought about Reyes calling her Dust Line, about the shot that had skipped off rock to find its target, about the moment she'd realized the entire attack was orchestrated. Someone had been watching her for months, waiting for the right moment to activate her. The question wasn't whether she'd play their game, she was already in it. The question was whether she'd play by their rules or make her own. As sedatives pulled her toward sleep, she made her decision. When she woke up, she'd call the number on the card. But she'd do it on her terms, with her own agenda. Because if someone had orchestrated all this just to test her, she was going to make sure they got more than they bargained for. The range had been turned into a weapon today, but Lena had been the one to show them how. Now she was going to find out why that mattered so much to someone that they'd sacrificed an entire network of assets just to see her shoot. The fluorescent lights in the NCIS interrogation room flickered slightly, casting harsh shadows across Dana Keene's face. She hadn't moved in 3 hours, hadn't asked for water or a lawyer, just sat there with that same unsettling smile. Lena watched through the one-way glass, her shoulder still throbbing despite the pain medication. "She's waiting for something," Lena said to Special Agent Rachel Torres, the lead investigator. "We've been through her phone, her computer, everything. All the data paths lead to dead ends, foreign servers that no longer exist." Torres was frustrated, and it showed. She planned this for months, maybe years. Lena studied Keene's posture, the way her fingers drummed a specific pattern on the metal table. "That's Morse code," she said suddenly. "She's tapping out Morse." Torres leaned forward. "What's she saying?" Lena concentrated on the rhythm. "Hotel, Echo, Romeo, Hero." She keeps repeating hero. A code name or a trigger? Lena's mind raced back to the attack. "Commander Mercer, what was the classification code for yesterday's training exercise, the one that was supposedly scheduled?" Mercer, who'd been standing silently in the corner, straightened. "Operation High Eagle Response Option, HERO. His face paled. "Son of a bitch, she's not done." Before anyone could respond, Keene spoke for the first time in hours, her voice carrying clearly through the speakers. 3 hours, 17 minutes until Phase 4. You might want to evacuate the harbor." Torres slammed her hand on the console. "The harbor. What's in the harbor?" "Everything," Mercer said grimly. Half the Pacific Fleet is docked for maintenance. If she's got something planned there. Lena was already moving, ignoring the protest from her injured shoulder. We need to see the range schedules for the last 6 months. All of them. Why the schedules? Torres asked. Because that's how she operated. She didn't just steal information, she shaped it, made sure specific assets were in specific places at specific times. Lena pulled up the files on Torres's computer, her good hand flying across the keyboard. Look at this. Every time a SEAL team was scheduled for the range, she also scheduled maintenance on nearby facilities. Construction crews, civilian contractors, all with access but no oversight. Creating opportunities for surveillance, Torres realized. More than that. Lena highlighted several entries. These contractors, half of them don't exist. The companies are shells registered overseas. She wasn't just watching, she was infiltrating. And if the harbor's the target, Mercer was already on his phone. Admiral, we need to initiate emergency protocols at the harbor. Yes, sir, all vessels. I understand the cost, sir, but... Through the glass, Keen's smile widened. She knew they were watching, knew they were scrambling. This was all part of her plan. Lena turned back to the schedules, something nagging at her. Then she found it a maintenance request for the harbor's automated defense systems, scheduled for today. The contractor. Another shell company registered just 2 weeks ago. They're not going to attack the harbor, she said suddenly. They're going to make us attack ourselves. Everyone turned to stare at her. The automated defense systems. If they've compromised those, they could turn our own weapons against our ships, make it look like a system malfunction, or worse, like one of our allies attacked us. Torres grabbed her radio. All units converge on harbor defense control. Possible compromise of automated systems. But Keen was laughing now, the sound chilling through the speakers. Too late, she said. You're always too late. That's when the lights flickered again, longer this time. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Through the window they could see the harbor in the distance. The massive Phalanx anti-missile systems on the docked destroyers were moving their radar-guided cannons, swiveling toward their own ships. Cut the power to those systems, Mercer shouted. We can't, a technician reported. Someone's locked us out of our own network. Lena's mind raced. The Phalanx systems were designed to operate independently to engage threats without human intervention. If someone had rewritten their targeting parameters, we need to physically disconnect them, cut the hard lines. That's 30 ships, Torres protested. We don't have time. We don't need 30 teams, we just need to cut the main trunk lines. Lena pulled up a schematic she'd memorized during her range maintenance work. The base's infrastructure was all interconnected, a legacy of decades of upgrades and patches. Here, and here, 3 junction points that feed the entire harbor grid. Mercer was already moving. Daniels, Martinez, Thompson, you're with me. He looked at Lena. You're staying here. Like hell I am. I'm the only one who knows exactly where those junctions are. You can barely stand. Then I'll sit and give directions. She grabbed Torres's tablet with her good hand. But we both know I need to be there. The argument was interrupted by the first burst of cannon fire from the harbor. A Phalanx system had locked onto something, a seagull, a piece of debris. It didn't matter. Once one started firing, the others would interpret the muzzle flashes as threats. It would cascade into a mechanical fratricide. Move, Mercer commanded. They raced through the base in a commandeered vehicle, Lena directing them through service roads she'd used countless times during range maintenance. Her shoulder screamed with every bump, but she pushed through the pain. In the back seat, she pulled up the technical manuals for the Phalanx systems on the tablet. There, she said. The systems have a manual override, but it requires a specific key sequence at the local terminal. What sequence? I'm working on it. She scrolled through pages of documentation. The defense contractor who'd built these systems had buried the override protocols deep in the technical specifications, Smart from a security standpoint, deadly in a situation like this. They screeched to a halt at the first junction point. It was housed in a concrete bunker, part of the base's Cold War infrastructure. The door was already open, its lock cut with industrial tools. "They've been here," Daniel said, weapon raised. Inside, they found chaos. Cables had been rerouted, new hardware spliced into the existing systems. It would take hours to untangle what had been done. "We don't have hours," Lena said. She studied the modifications, recognizing the handiwork. "This is professional, military-grade intrusion." "Can you fix it?" "No, but I can break it." She found the main power conduit, a massive cable that fed the entire section. "Cut this, and we lose a third of the harbor defenses permanently, but it'll stop the phalanx systems in this sector." Mercer didn't hesitate. He pulled out his combat knife and started sawing through the protective sheath. Sparks flew as he hit the copper core, and the lights in the bunker died. In the distance, they could see several phalanx systems go dark. "2 more to go," Lena said. They raced to the second junction, but this time they weren't alone. 3 men in civilian contractor uniforms were working on the equipment. They looked up surprised, and one reached for something under his jacket. Martinez fired first, a controlled burst that dropped the man before he could draw his weapon. The other 2 raised their hands, but Lena noticed one of them shifting his foot toward a device on the floor. "Dead man switch!" she shouted. Mercer's shot was precise, hitting the man's leg and dropping him away from the device. The third contractor tried to run, but Thompson tackled him, zip-tying his hands with practiced efficiency. "Who sent you?" Mercer demanded. The man just smiled, the same unsettling expression Keene had worn. "You're asking the wrong questions." Lena ignored him, focusing on the device. It was a network relay feeding false data into the defense grid. She traced its connections, finding the pattern. "They're not just compromising the systems, they're recording everything. Our response times, our protocols, our weaknesses." "For what?" "For next time." She found the power coupling and yanked it free. Another section of the harbor went dark, more phalanx systems powering down. But through the window, she could see one destroyer's system still active, its cannon swiveling toward a fuel depot. "That'll take out half the harbor if it fires," Mercer said. "Third junction now." They sprinted back to the vehicle, Lena's vision graying at the edges from pain and blood loss. The third junction was the furthest built into the harbor master's building itself. As they approached, she saw something that made her blood run cold. "Stop the car." "What?" "That van." She pointed to a white utility van parked outside. "I've seen it before. At the range during the attack." Mercer radioed for backup, but they couldn't wait. The phalanx system was already tracking its barrel, swinging toward the fuel depot. They had maybe 30 seconds. They burst through the door, finding themselves in a firefight immediately. The junction room had been turned into a defensive position with at least 6 hostiles behind improvised cover. But these weren't random mercenaries, they moved like soldiers, their fire discipline perfect. "Flashbang," Thompson called, tossing the grenade. The explosion of light and sound was disorienting, but Lena had already spotted what she needed. The junction box was behind the hostiles, but there was a maintenance shaft that ran above it. She'd used it dozens of times to run new cables. "Cover me," she said, already moving toward an access panel. "You can't climb with that shoulder." But adrenaline was overriding pain. She pulled herself into the shaft with her good arm, her injured shoulder screaming in protest. The space was cramped, dark, filled with decades of dust and cable runs. She crawled forward, following memory more than sight. Below, the firefight intensified. She could hear Mercer directing fire, the controlled bursts of the SEALs answered by the deeper sound of enemy AKs. But above it all, she heard the mechanical whine of the phalanx system preparing to fire. She found the junction box access point, a small hatch that opened into the room below. Through it, she could see the main power distribution panel. and standing next to it, entering commands into a laptop, was someone she recognized. Lieutenant Commander James Keller, the base's cybersecurity officer. He was supposed to be protecting their systems, not destroying them. "Keller," again she shouted through the hatch. He looked up, surprised. In that moment of distraction, Daniels put 2 rounds center mass, dropping him. The laptop fell, its screen cracking against the concrete. Lena dropped through the hatch, landing hard on her injured shoulder. Stars exploded across her vision, but she crawled to the junction box. Her fingers found the emergency cutoff, a mechanical switch that couldn't be hacked or overridden. She pulled it. The harbor's remaining defense systems went dead. In the sudden silence, she could hear the fuel depot's massive tanks creaking in the wind, intact and unexploded. "Clear," Mercer called out. The hostiles were down or captured. Lena rolled onto her back, staring at the ceiling. Blood was seeping through her bandages again, and she could feel herself starting to slip into shock. But something wasn't right. This had been too easy. Keene had planned everything else to perfection. Why would the third junction be so vulnerable? Unless... "It's not over," she gasped. "This was another diversion." Mercer knelt beside her. "What do you mean?" Keene said Phase 4. This was only Phase 3. She wanted us here, wanted us to think we'd won. Lena forced herself to think through the pain. What did she say exactly? 3 hours, 17 minutes. That's too specific, unless... Her eyes widened. "The base's nuclear weapons storage. That's what the timer's for." Mercer's face went white. The weapons storage facility was on the opposite side of the base. While they'd been saving the harbor, Keene's real team would have had free access. "Base security to weapons storage emergency response," Mercer barked into his radio. But the response was what Lena had feared. "Sir, we're showing all normal at weapons storage. Sensors are green, patrols report no activity." "They've compromised your sensors," Lena said. "Just like they did with the harbor systems. You need to physically verify." Mercer helped her to her feet. "Can you make it? Do I have a choice?" They raced across the base, Lena directing them through shortcuts she'd learned during months of invisible maintenance work. Her shoulder was agony, her vision coming in and out of focus, but she held on. As they approached the weapons storage facility, everything looked normal. Too normal. "Where are the guards?" Thompson asked. The entrance checkpoint was empty. The gate stood open, and in the distance they could hear the distinctive sound of heavy machinery. "They're not stealing weapons," Lena realized. "They're going to detonate them in place, make it look like an accident, or worse, an inside job by American forces." They entered the facility, finding unconscious guards, drugged, not killed. Keene's people wanted witnesses to survive, to report that they'd seen American military personnel conducting the operation. The main storage bunker's blast door was open. Inside, Lena could see figures in U.S. military uniforms working on something attached to one of the weapons containers. The device was massive, industrial, nothing like a standard military explosive. "Thermite," she breathed. "They're using thermite to breach the containment. It'll look like a maintenance accident, a catastrophic failure, rather than an attack." "How do we stop it?" Lena studied the scene. There were at least 8 hostiles, all positioned with overlapping fields of fire. A frontal assault would be suicide, but the thermite device had given her an idea. "The fire suppression system," she said. "If we trigger it, the halon gas will displace the oxygen. Thermite can't burn without oxygen. That'll suffocate everyone in there. For about 30 seconds before the ventilation cycles. We just need to be faster than they are." Mercer made the call. They'd need to split up someone to trigger the suppression system, someone to cut the power to prevent the ventilation from cycling, and the assault team to move in during the confusion. "I'll handle the suppression system," Lena said. "I know where the manual triggers are." You can barely walk. I don't need to walk. I need to think. And right now, I'm the only one who knows these systems well enough to do this quickly. There was no time to argue. Mercer and his team positioned themselves while Lena made her way to the environmental control room. Her legs were shaking, her vision tunneling, but she found the panel she needed. The manual trigger required 2 keys turned simultaneously, a safety measure to prevent accidental activation. She didn't have 2 keys, but she had something better knowledge of how the system was wired. She pried open the panel with her Leatherman, found the relay circuit, and bridged it with the blade. Alarms screamed as halon gas flooded the storage bunker. Through the security monitor, she watched the hostiles scramble for gas masks that weren't there. Keene hadn't planned for this contingency. "Go, go, go!" Mercer's voice echoed over the radio. The assault was swift and decisive. The hostiles, already disoriented from oxygen deprivation, couldn't mount an effective defense. In seconds, it was over. But the thermite device was still active, its chemical reaction already initiated. The halon had slowed it, but hadn't stopped it completely. "Everyone out," Mercer ordered, but Lena was already moving toward the device. "We can't leave it," she said. "Even slowed, it'll eventually burn through." She studied the device's construction. It was elegant in its simplicity, a shaped charge of thermite designed to focus its energy downward through the containment vessel and into the weapon below. But thermite had a weakness. It needed a continuous reaction. If you could cool it fast enough, drastically enough, you could stop the reaction. "Liquid nitrogen," she said. "The weapons storage uses it for environmental control. There's a main line running right above us." Martinez was already moving, finding the pipe she indicated. "How do we breach it without tools?" Lena looked at the weapons scattered from the firefight. "Shape charge from a grenade directed upward. It'll rupture the pipe." "That's insane. That's physics." Thompson pulled the pin on a grenade and held it against the ceiling while Martinez packed debris around it to direct the blast upward. They had 5 seconds. "Everyone back." The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. The pipe ruptured as planned, liquid nitrogen cascading down in a freezing waterfall. It hit the thermite device, and the extreme temperature differential caused the metal casing to crack and shatter. The reaction died, leaving only frozen metal and the acrid smell of stopped chemistry. Through the fog of nitrogen vapor, Lena saw something that made her heart stop. One of the downed hostiles was moving, reaching for something. Not a weapon, a phone. "Stop him!" she shouted, but her words were lost in the ringing aftermath of the explosion. The man pressed send on a message before Daniels could reach him. On the screen, Lena saw just 2 words: Phoenix Protocol. "What's Phoenix Protocol?" Mercer demanded, but the man just smiled, that same unsettling smile. "You'll find out soon enough." Lena's legs finally gave out. She collapsed against a weapons container, her vision going dark around the edges. But even as consciousness faded, her mind was working on the puzzle. Phoenix Protocol. A bird that rises from ashes. Keene had expected to fail. This entire operation, the months of planning the sacrificed assets, it was all meant to fail. Which meant the real operation was something else entirely. "The data," she whispered, barely audible. "During the power outage. She said every classified system was accessed." Mercer leaned closer. "What about it?" "They weren't stealing it. They were changing it, inserting something." The pieces were coming together in her fading consciousness. Sleeper programs, hidden in our own classified databases. Phoenix Protocol activates them. Activates them to do what? But Lena was already unconscious, her body finally surrendering to trauma and blood loss. The last thing she heard was Mercer calling for immediate medical evacuation, and somewhere in the distance, Dana Keene's laughter echoing from a dozen security monitors throughout the base. She woke 3 days later in a secure medical facility, surrounded by more brass than she'd ever seen in one room. Admirals, generals, men and women whose decisions shaped national policy. And they all wanted to know the same thing. How had a range maintenance contractor figured out what hundreds of intelligence analysts had missed? But the real question, the one that kept Lena awake despite the morphine, was different. Why had Keen wanted her to figure it out? Why leave clues that only someone with her specific background could follow? The answer came from an unexpected source. Reyes, wheelchair-bound but recovering, rolled into her room on the 4th day, carrying a tablet. "You need to see this," he said. "We decrypted part of Keen's personal files. There's a video message, for you specifically." On the screen, Dana Keen sat in what looked like a hotel room recorded weeks before the attack. She looked directly at the camera, directly at Lena. "Miss Phan," she said. "Or should I say Agent Phan? No, not yet, but soon. You're wondering why I chose you to be there to see through the deceptions." She smiled. "Your father understood the importance of hidden knowledge of capabilities that remain invisible until the critical moment. He died protecting such secrets." Lena's breath caught. Her father's death had been classified, the details sealed. "He was investigating a network," Keen continued. "A group that sells not just secrets but influence, the ability to shape events by controlling information. He got close, too close. They killed him and made it look like an IED in Afghanistan." The room spun. Lena gripped the bed rails. "I was recruited by them 5 years ago," Keen said. "But I'm not the only one. Phoenix Protocol isn't just about activating sleeper programs. It's about activating sleeper agents, hundreds of them throughout the military and intelligence community. People you trust. People you work with every day." She leaned toward the camera. "I volunteered for this mission to be caught, to be interrogated. Because someone needs to know the truth. And you, with your father's analytical mind and your invisible presence, you're the only one who can find them. The real war isn't with foreign enemies, Miss Phan. It's with the cancer inside our own system." The video paused, and Reyes set down the tablet. "There's more, but the doctor said not to overwhelm you." Lena stared at the frozen image of Keen's face. Everything had been orchestrated, the attack, the defense of the harbor, even her own injuries. All to position her exactly where Keen wanted her, inside the system, trusted, but still outside enough to see clearly. "She's playing us," Lena said finally. "Maybe. Or maybe she's telling the truth. Maybe both." Lena thought about the Phoenix Protocol, about sleeper agents throughout the military. "We need to audit every system, every database that was accessed during the outage." "Already being done, but it's thousands of files, millions of lines of code. It'll take years to check everything." "Not if we know what to look for." Lena's mind was already working, seeing patterns. "Get me a laptop and the access logs from the outage." "You're supposed to be recovering." "I'll recover faster if I'm working." She met his eyes. "Keen chose me for a reason. Maybe it's a trap, maybe it's truth, but either way, I'm going to find out why my father really died." Reyes nodded and wheeled himself out. 30 minutes later, he returned with a secure laptop and a stack of hard drives. "Where do we start?" he asked. "With the one thing Keen didn't expect," Lena said, already typing. "She planned for me to investigate the sleeper agents, but she didn't plan for us to investigate her. Every deception has a truth at its core. We find out who Dana Keen really is, and we'll know what Phoenix Protocol really does." As she worked diving deep into data streams and classified databases, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that she was still dancing to Keen's tune. But sometimes the only way forward was through. And if there really were hundreds of sleeper agents in the military, if her father had really died trying to expose them, then she'd finish what he started. The range had taught her something important. Invisibility was a weapon. And now that everyone was watching her, expecting her to investigate in certain directions, she'd do her real work in the shadows they weren't watching. Phoenix Protocol had been activated. But Lena had protocols of her own. And unlike Keen, she didn't need an elaborate operation to execute them. She just needed time, patience, and the skills that 8 months of invisible maintenance work had taught her how to fix things that were broken, and how to break things that seemed secure. The real game was just beginning. The secure laptop's screen glowed in the dim hospital room as Lena's fingers flew across the keyboard lines of code, scrolling past faster than Reyes could follow. She'd been at it for 6 hours straight, refusing food, ignoring the nurse's protests about her need for rest. Something in the data had caught her attention, a pattern hidden in the chaos of the Phoenix Protocol activation. "There," she said suddenly, pointing at a timestamp buried in the system logs. "Look at this. The protocol activated at exactly 1347 hours, but there's a secondary ping here, 3 milliseconds later, from a different server." "So?" Reyes leaned forward in his wheelchair, squinting at the screen. 3 milliseconds is too long for a system echo, but too short for human intervention. It's automated, but not part of the original program. She pulled up another window, cross-referencing IP addresses. Someone else was watching. Someone wanted to know the exact moment Phoenix Protocol went live. The door burst open, and Commander Mercer entered with Agent Torres and a man Lena didn't recognize, tall, gray-haired, wearing a suit that screamed federal authority. "Miss Phan," the stranger said, "I'm Director Nathan Cross, National Security Agency. We need to evacuate you immediately." "What's happening?" Lena asked, but she was already saving her work to an encrypted drive. "Keen escaped." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Reyes cursed. Mercer's jaw tightened, and Lena felt her blood run cold. "How?" she demanded. "She was in maximum security." "During a routine transfer to federal custody," Cross explained, already moving toward the door. "The convoy was hit. Professional job. 8 U.S. Marshals dead. She had help from inside." Lena grabbed her laptop, ignoring the spike of pain from her shoulder as she stood. "The sleeper agents. They're protecting her." "Or eliminating a liability," Mercer countered. "We need to move, now." They rushed through the hospital corridors, Cross's security detail forming a protective diamond around them. Lena noticed how some of the agents kept watching the hospital staff hands near their weapons. Nobody could be trusted anymore. "Where are we going?" she asked as they loaded into an armored SUV. "Safe house," Cross replied. "Off the books. Only 5 people know it exists." But Lena was already thinking ahead. "No, that's what they expect. Keen knows your protocols. Remember, she knows exactly where you'd take a high-value asset." She turned to Mercer. "We need to go somewhere random, somewhere that's not in any database." "Like where?" She thought for a moment. "The abandoned range maintenance building on the north side. Building 47. It's been condemned for 3 years, not even on current base maps." Cross shook his head. "That's not secure." "Exactly, which is why they won't look there." She met his eyes. "Director, your security protocols are compromised. The only way to stay safe is to be unpredictable." Mercer made the call. "Driver North Access Road, Building 47. The SUV turned sharply, tires squealing. Through the rear window, Lena saw another vehicle make the same turn, following at a discreet distance. "We've got a tail," the driver reported. "Friendly?" Cross asked. "Unknown. They're using our protocols, but—" The driver hesitated. "Something's off about their formation." Lena pulled up a traffic app on her phone, checking the base's internal vehicle tracking system. She'd installed it herself months ago for maintenance scheduling. "That vehicle isn't registered to any unit. It's using cloned credentials." "Phoenix Protocol," Reyes said grimly. They're already active. Mercer was on the radio immediately. All units, possible hostile vehicle approaching Building 47. Do not engage unless fired upon. Could be compromised friendlies. They screeched to a halt outside the condemned building. It was a mess, broken windows, graffiti debris everywhere. But Lena knew its bones were solid and, more importantly, it had something the pursuers wouldn't expect. Inside, she said, leading them through a gap in the chained fence. Basement level, now! They descended into darkness. Cross's agents switching on tactical lights. The basement was a maze of abandoned equipment and storage rooms, but Lena moved with confidence. She'd explored every inch of this place during her boring maintenance shifts. Here, she said, stopping at what looked like a solid wall. But when she pushed on a specific spot, a section swung inward. Cold War-era bunker, not on any current blueprints. They filed inside just as they heard vehicles arriving above. The bunker was small, musty, but it had reinforced concrete walls 3 feet thick. "How did you know about this?" Cross demanded. "I found it while checking for structural damage. Never reported it because..." She shrugged. "I liked having a place where nobody could find me." Through the ventilation grates, they could hear footsteps above multiple people searching the building. Then a voice, amplified by a megaphone. "Miss Phan, we know you're here. Director Cross Commander Mercer, you're protecting the wrong asset. She's not who you think she is." Lena recognized the voice. It was Lieutenant Commander Keller, the cybersecurity officer they'd shot at the harbor junction. Apparently, he'd survived. "Keller's one of them," Mercer growled, reaching for his weapon. "Wait," Lena said. Something wasn't right. She pulled up the security footage from the harbor incident on her laptop, the video she'd automatically backed up during their response. She found the moment Daniels had shot Keller zoomed in, enhanced. "Look at this," she whispered. "The blood pattern. It's wrong." Cross leaned in. "What do you mean? The spread is too uniform, like a squib pack in a movie. And here, she enhanced further. Body armor. Daniels's shots never penetrated. Keller faked his death." "Why would he..." Reyes started, then stopped. "Unless he's not really Phoenix Protocol. Unless he's something else." The footsteps above stopped. Then Keller's voice, again closer, now probably at the basement entrance. 3 years ago, your father sent me a message before he died, Miss Phan. One word, dust line. I didn't know what it meant until I saw the range footage, heard what the SEALs called you." Lena's hand tightened on her laptop. That was impossible. Nobody had called her dust line until the attack. "Your father knew this day would come," Keller continued. "He knew they'd eventually activate someone like Keene, use her to expose our counterintelligence network. So he set up a secondary protocol. You were never supposed to be a target, Miss Phan. You were supposed to be a trigger." "Don't listen to him," Cross said. "It's psychological warfare." But Lena was already pulling up her father's classified files, the ones she'd finally gotten access to after the attack. There, buried in his last report, was a single notation. "Dust line contingency initialized." "Oh my God," she breathed. "My father did set this up. He knew I'd end up at that range. He knew about my skills, my degree. He positioned me there." "That's impossible," Torres protested. "He died 3 years ago." "But his contacts didn't," Lena said, pieces falling into place. "Keller, how many others are there? How many people have been watching me?" 17, Keller's voice replied through the grates. "All of us recruited by your father to watch for Phoenix Protocol activation. We're not sleeper agents, Miss Phan. We're the antibodies." Mercer had his weapon out now, aimed at the bunker door. "This could all be a trick." "Or it could be the truth," Lena countered. She made a decision. "I'm going up." "Absolutely not," Cross commanded. "Director, with respect. We're blind down here. If Keller wanted us dead, he could have already pumped gas through those vents or blown the building. She stood wincing at her shoulder's protest. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks. Before anyone could stop her, she was moving toward the door. Mercer followed, cursing under his breath. They emerged into the basement, proper weapons, ready to find Keller standing alone, hands visible, no weapon in sight. "Hello, Lena," he said. "You look just like your father." "Prove you knew him," she demanded. Keller smiled sadly. "He always carried a photo of you at your first shooting competition. You were 12, had just won the Junior Precision Rifle Championship. He said you could calculate wind better than anyone he'd ever seen." The detail was too specific, too personal to be from a file. Lena lowered her weapon slightly. "What's really happening here?" "Phoenix Protocol is exactly what Keene said sleeper agents throughout the military. But your father discovered it years ago. Instead of exposing it directly, which would have caused chaos, he built a shadow network to counter it. We've been watching, waiting, documenting. Then why let the attack happen? We didn't know when or how they'd activate. Keene was deep cover even from them. She went rogue, decided to expose both networks." Keller pulled out a tablet showing a map with red and green dots across military installations worldwide. "Red is confirmed Phoenix agents. Green is us. Look at the pattern." Lena studied the display. The Phoenix agents were positioned at critical information nodes, intelligence, communications, logistics. But her father's network surrounded them, positioned to monitor and contain. "It's a trap," she realized. "You let them activate to identify them all at once." "Your father's final gambit," Keller confirmed. "But we have a problem. Keene's escape wasn't part of the plan. She's gone completely off script and she knows both networks now." An explosion rocked the building. Through the windows, Lena saw military vehicles surrounding them, but their markings were wrong, slight variations that suggested hasty repainting. "Phoenix agents," Keller said. "They're trying to eliminate everyone who knows the truth." "Including you?" Mercer asked, weapons still trained on him. "Especially me. I'm supposed to be dead, remember?" Another explosion closer this time. The building shook, dust raining from the ceiling. They needed to move, but they were surrounded. "The tunnels," Lena said suddenly. "This building connects to the old coastal defense tunnels. They run for miles underground." "Lead the way," Cross ordered, apparently deciding to trust her judgment. They descended deeper past the bunker into maintenance tunnels that hadn't been used since the Cold War. Lena navigated by memory and instinct, her father's analytical mind serving her well. Behind them, they could hear pursuit boots on concrete, echoing shouts. "They're tracking us somehow," Torres said. Lena checked her equipment. Phone, laptop, the encrypted drive. She stopped. The drive. She'd been saving all her discoveries to it, but if the Phoenix Protocol had infiltrated NSA's encryption methods. She pulled out the drive and examined it under her phone's flashlight. There, a tiny modification to the USB connector, almost invisible. A tracking device. "They've been following this," she said, then made a decision that physically hurt. She threw the drive as far as she could down a side tunnel. "All that work gone." "Not gone," Reyes said, tapping his temple. "You remember everything, don't you? Like your father." She did. Every line of code, every timestamp, every anomaly. It was all there in her head, the pattern becoming clearer with each piece of information. They emerged from the tunnels onto a section of beach she'd used for ballistics testing. The sun was setting, painting the Pacific in shades of orange and red. But there was no time to appreciate the view. A helicopter was approaching, no running lights, no identification. "Hostile?" Mercer asked. Lena studied its approach pattern, the specific way it banked against the coastal wind. "No, that's a Navy pilot, but they're flying dark," She turned to Keller. Your people, one way to find out. He pulled out a laser pointer, flashed a specific pattern at the aircraft. The helicopter immediately changed course, descending toward them. Could be compromised, Cross warned. Everything could be compromised, Lena replied. But we can't stay here. The helicopter touched down, and the side door slid open. The pilot was a woman Lena recognized, Captain Sarah Mitchell, someone she'd seen around the base, but never interacted with. Dustline protocol active, Mitchell said. Your father sends his regards. My father's dead, Lena stated flatly. His protocols aren't. Get in. Keen's been located. They climbed aboard the helicopter, lifting off immediately. Through the window, Lena could see vehicles converging on their previous position. They'd escaped by seconds. Where's Keen? Mercer demanded. She's making a play for Northcom's command center, Mitchell replied. Full assault with about 30 Phoenix operatives. It's chaos. Regular forces don't know who to trust. Lena's mind raced. Northcom controlled Homeland Defense. If Phoenix Protocol controlled that, they could stage a false flag operation, make it look like we're under attack, justify martial law. Or worse, Keller added. They could actually launch something and blame it on foreign actors. The helicopter banked sharply, heading inland. Below, Lena could see military vehicles racing along highways, some toward the chaos, others clearly fleeing from it. How do we know who to trust? Torres asked the question everyone was thinking. We don't, Lena said simply. But I know how to find out. She turned to Mitchell. I need a secure line to the base's automated defense systems. Those are offline after the harbor incident. The main systems are, but the backup diagnostic network isn't. I installed it myself 2 months ago. It's not connected to anything critical, just monitors system health. She pulled out her phone. But it can see everything. She accessed the diagnostic network through a maintenance back door she'd left for herself, never imagining she'd use it for something like this. The screen filled with data system statuses, network traffic access logs. There, she said, identifying patterns in the chaos. Look at the access timestamps. Phoenix agents all logged in within the same 3-second window. They're coordinated, but that coordination is their weakness. Real responses are chaotic, messy. Theirs are too perfect. Can you identify them all? Working on it. Her fingers flew across the phone's small screen, writing a quick algorithm to identify the suspicious patterns. Names started appearing, dozens of them scattered throughout the command structure. Jesus, Cross breathed. It's worse than we thought. But now we know, Mercer said. We can contain them. Not if Keen gets control of Northcom first, Mitchell warned. ETA 5 minutes. The helicopter descended toward the command center, and Lena could see the battle raging below. It looked like Civil War American forces fighting each other, nobody sure who was friend or foe. I have an idea, Lena said, but it's risky. Everything's risky now, Cross replied. The Phoenix Protocol relies on authentication codes, right? Their agents identify each other through the system. She held up her phone. I can inject false codes, make their own people look like hostiles to each other. That's brilliant, Keller said. Turn their coordination against them. But I need to be inside Northcom's server room to do it. Direct hardware access. Mercer checked his weapon. Then we get you there. The helicopter touched down on the command center's roof. Immediately, they took fire from multiple directions. The door gunner returned fire while they bailed out, running for the roof access door. Friendly, friendly, Mercer shouted, but in the chaos, nobody was listening. They fought their way down through the building, Lena protected in the center of their formation. Every corner could hide an enemy. Every soldier they passed could be Phoenix Protocol. Server rooms on sub-level 3, she said, remembering the building's layout from a tour years ago. They reached the elevator, but it was locked down. Lena didn't hesitate, prying open the control panel and hot-wiring it with skills learned from years of fixing broken range equipment. The elevator descended, and she used the brief respite to refine her code. It had to be perfect, one error, and Phoenix Protocol would know they'd been compromised. The doors opened to chaos. The server room was a battleground, technicians hiding behind equipment racks while soldiers exchanged fire. At the center, surrounded by Phoenix operatives, stood Dana Keene. She looked different, harder, more dangerous. The act was completely dropped now, revealing the operative beneath. "Miss Phan," she called out over the gunfire. "Right on time." "It's over, Keene," Cross shouted. "We know about Phoenix. We know about all of it." "Do you?" Keene laughed. "You know what I wanted you to know. Every revelation, every discovery, all according to plan." But Lena was studying the situation, and she saw something Keene didn't expect her to notice. One of the Phoenix operatives kept checking his watch, tiny nervous glances. He was on a timer waiting for something specific. "You're stalling," Lena said suddenly. "This isn't about taking Northcom. It's about keeping us here." Her eyes widened. "The nuclear weapons storage. You left something behind." Keene's smile flickered for just a moment, but it was enough. "The thermite device wasn't the real threat," Lena continued, pieces clicking together. "You planted something else. Something that needs time to activate." "Clever girl," Keene admitted. "Your father would be proud. Too bad you're too late." But Lena was already moving not toward Keene, but toward the main server rack. She plugged her phone directly into the maintenance port and uploaded her code. The effect was immediate. Every Phoenix operative's identification suddenly showed as hostile to their own systems. Their coordinated communication collapsed as their own protocols turned against them. In the confusion, Mercer's team moved with lethal efficiency. Keene tried to run, but Lena had anticipated that too. She'd locked down all the exits through the maintenance network. The woman who'd orchestrated so much chaos was trapped by a simple door lock subroutine. "You missed something," Lena said, approaching Keene carefully. "My father didn't just recruit people to watch Phoenix Protocol. He recruited them to watch me, to make sure I was ready for this moment." She pulled up the diagnostic data on her phone, showing a very specific pattern. "The secondary ping I found earlier, it wasn't Phoenix Protocol. It was my father's network recording everything. Every Phoenix agent, every activation, every communication. We have it all." Keene's composure finally cracked. "That's impossible. He's dead. His body is. His mission isn't." Lena turned to Keller. "Initiate Dustline Omega." Keller nodded, pulling out a device she hadn't seen before. When he activated it, every screen in the facility lit up with the same message: "Phoenix Protocol compromised. All units stand down. Authentication, Delta Lima Papa 17." Her father's authorization code still valid after 3 years. Around the facility, Phoenix operatives began surrendering, realizing their network had been exposed. Without anonymity, without the ability to hide among regular forces, they were just conspirators caught in the act. But Lena wasn't celebrating. She turned back to Keene. "The device at the weapons storage. What is it?" Keene smiled one last time. "Insurance. If Phoenix falls, everyone falls. You have about 10 minutes before it activates." Lena ran for the elevator, Mercer and his team following. As they rose toward the helicopter, she was already calculating. The weapons storage was 15 minutes away by air. They'd never make it in time. Unless... "Mitchell," she called to the pilot as they reached the roof. "Can this bird break Mach? Not even close." "Then we don't go there." She turned to Keller. "Your father's network is anyone at the weapons storage right now." He checked his device. 2 assets, but they're technical specialists, not EOD. They don't need to be. She grabbed the helicopter's radio tuning to an emergency frequency. This is Dust Line Actual to any station at weapons storage. Authorization Delta Lima Papa. Respond immediately. Static, then a voice. This is Lieutenant Morrison. I'm here with Sergeant Klein. We're at the storage facility, but listen carefully, Lena interrupted. In the main vault thermite damage site, there's a hidden device. You need to find anything with a timer display. Found it. Jesus, it's showing 4 minutes. Don't touch it. Look for wires leading away from it. Follow them. They go into the floor. Wait, there's an access panel. Open it. Through the radio, she could hear metal scraping. Then Morrison's voice, tight with fear. It's connected to the base's power grid. If I'm reading this right, it's designed to overload the containment systems. Everything will go critical. 3 minutes. Lena closed her eyes, visualizing the facility's layout, the power distribution she'd memorized during her maintenance work. There had to be a way. The emergency generators, she said suddenly. Are they running, yes, standard protocol after the earlier attack? Good. Listen very carefully. You need to create a feedback loop. Connect the device's power input to its own output, but through the generator's frequency inverter. That's insane. It could explode. No, it'll create a null field. The device will think it's drawing power, but it'll actually be feeding itself. Basic physics energy can't create itself. 2 minutes. Over the radio, she could hear Morrison and Klein working frantically, sparks cursing the sound of electrical arcing. 1 minute. Connection made, Morrison reported. But the timer's still running. It will. The timer's mechanical, not electrical. But watch the power readings. 30 seconds. Power draw is dropping. Oscillating. It's going into a loop. 10 seconds. Timer's at 0. Nothing's happening. No detonation, no power surge. It's just dead. The helicopter erupted in cheers, but Lena slumped back, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her shoulder was screaming, her head was pounding, and she felt like she could sleep for a week. It's over, Mercer said. No, she corrected. It's just beginning. Phoenix Protocol is exposed, but whoever was behind it is still out there. And now they know we're onto them. Cross nodded grimly. She's right. This was just the opening move. The real war is coming. Lena looked out at the setting sun, thinking about her father, about the network he'd built, about the invisible war he'd been fighting. She'd been drafted into it without her knowledge, positioned like a chess piece on a board she couldn't see. But now she could see it. The patterns were clear, the players revealed. Phoenix Protocol had failed, but something else would take its place. It always did. So what now? Reyes asked. Lena turned to Keller. How many others are there? How many people did my father recruit? Hundreds, maybe thousands, spread throughout the military intelligence services, even civilian contractors. Then we organize them, make the network official, turn it into what Phoenix Protocol was supposed to be, a safeguard against infiltration. Cross was already nodding. I'll take it to the president. After today, you'll have whatever resources you need. But Lena was thinking beyond that. Her father had seen this coming, had prepared for it. What else had he seen? What other threats were lurking in the shadows? She pulled out her phone, accessing the diagnostic network one more time. There in the data, she found something she'd missed before. A hidden partition locked with encryption. She recognized her father's personal cipher, the one he'd taught her as a child. She decoded it, and a single message appeared. Trust no one completely. Question everything. The real enemy isn't who you think. When you're ready, look for Prometheus. Love, Dad. Prometheus. Another protocol. Another network. Another threat. The helicopter banked toward the base, where cleanup operations were already underway. Phoenix operatives were being arrested, systems were being secured, and order was slowly being restored. But Lena knew this was just a pause, not an ending. Her father had set something in motion, something that went beyond Phoenix protocol and counterintelligence networks. As they landed, she made a decision. She'd take Cross's offer, join the official response team, but she'd also continue her father's work in the shadows, investigating Prometheus, preparing for whatever came next. Because one thing was certain, there would be a next time. And when it came, she wouldn't be invisible anymore. She'd be ready. The helicopter touched down, and Lena stepped out into a world that looked the same, but had fundamentally changed. Every face could be an enemy, every system could be compromised, every protocol could be a trap. But she'd learned something important today. The best weapon against deception wasn't technology or intelligence networks. It was the ability to see patterns, to think differently, to be unpredictable. Her father had known that. He'd made her into that weapon, forged her in invisibility, and revealed her in crisis. Now it was her turn to carry on his work. As she walked toward the command center, surrounded by people who'd tried to kill her and people who'd died to save her, Lena Phan allowed herself one small smile. They'd called her Dust Line because she could read the wind that others couldn't see. Now she'd learned to read the shadows that others couldn't imagine. The real game was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Phoenix Protocol's exposure, and the military legal machine was grinding through the aftermath with ruthless efficiency. Lena sat in a secure conference room at the Pentagon, watching Dana Keene on the monitor as the woman testified before a closed Senate committee. Even in orange prison garb, shackled to the chair, Keene maintained that unsettling composure. The network extends beyond what you've discovered, Keene was saying, her voice calm and measured. Phoenix Protocol was just one tentacle of something much larger. You've won a battle, not the war. Senator Harrison leaned forward. Then give us names. Full immunity is still on the table. Keene's laugh was soft, almost pitying. You still don't understand. The names I could give you are useless. The real power never shows its face. They operate through cutouts, proxies, people who don't even know they're being used. Lena turned to Director Cross, who stood beside her, watching the feed. She's telling the truth about that, at least. Every Phoenix operative we've interrogated had a handler they'd never actually met. But you found something, Cross said. It wasn't a question. She pulled up the data she'd been analyzing for 3 weeks, the patterns hidden in her father's encrypted files. Prometheus isn't another protocol. It's a person. Maybe the person, the architect behind all of this. On screen, Keene suddenly looked directly at the camera as if she could see Lena through it. Ask Dustline about the Winchester thesis. Ask her what her father really discovered. Lena's blood ran cold. The Winchester thesis was her father's private name for his investigation, something he'd never put in official reports. Only 3 people had known that term, her father, herself, and... My mother, she whispered. Cross turned sharply. Your mother. She died when you were 8. Car accident. Single vehicle lost control on a clear day. Lena's mind was racing, reviewing memories through a new lens. My father never believed it was an accident. The door burst open. Commander Mercer entered, followed by Reyes on crutches, his wheelchair abandoned as he recovered. We have a problem. Someone just accessed your father's sealed files at NSA. Used his authorization codes. That's impossible, Cross said. Those codes died with him. No, Lena said, already moving toward the door. Someone's had them all along. Someone who was close enough to him to know his protocols, his passwords, his patterns. She stopped, a terrible certainty filling her. Prometheus was in our house, in our family. They raced through Pentagon corridors toward the NSA liaison office. Lena's mind was reconstructing her childhood, seeing things she'd missed. Her mother's strange phone calls, the visitors who came at odd hours. The way her father would sometimes watch her mother with an expression she'd been too young to understand. Suspicion. He'd suspected his own wife. The NSA office was in chaos when they arrived. Screens showed cascading security breaches, files being accessed and copied at impossible speeds. "It's coming from inside," a technician reported. "Someone's physically connected to the core server." "Where?" Mercer demanded. "Sub-basement 7. But that's impossible. That area's been sealed since my father's death," Lena finished. She was already running. The sub-basement was a maze of old corridors and abandoned offices, remnants of Cold War paranoia. Lena navigated by instinct and fragments of memory her father had brought her here once, when she was very young. A take-your-daughter-to-work day that had seemed normal at the time, but now felt laden with significance. They found the core server room's door standing open, its locks bypassed with surgical precision. Inside, connected to the main terminal, was a woman Lena had seen in photographs, but never expected to meet. Her mother. Alive. Older scarred, but unmistakably her. "Hello, sweetheart," Lena Phan said, not looking up from the screen where data scrolled past in rivers of light. "You're early. I expected another 10 minutes at least." Lena's weapon was in her hand without conscious thought. "You're supposed to be dead." "Death was the only way to protect you, to protect the mission." Catherine finally turned, and Lena saw her father's analytical coldness in her mother's eyes. "Phoenix Protocol. Your father's network, all of it, we built it together. Then we realized what we'd created." "You're Prometheus," Lena said, the pieces finally clicking. "No, darling. We are Prometheus. Your father and I working from opposite sides. He built the antibody network while I infiltrated the disease." She gestured to the screen. "I've been inside their organization for 15 years, rising through their ranks, earning their trust. Today I'm burning it all down. By stealing classified files, by exposing them, every communication, every financial transaction, every operative they've ever recruited. It's all here, and in 30 seconds it'll be transmitted to every intelligence agency on the planet." Mercer raised his weapon. "Step away from the terminal." Catherine laughed, the sound achingly familiar, despite the years. "Commander Mercer, the decorated SEAL. Do you know your psychologist reports to them, Dr. Amanda Chen, has been profiling your entire team for 2 years, identifying weaknesses they could exploit?" Mercer's expression darkened, but his aim didn't waver. "Lena," Catherine continued, "the attack at the range wasn't about testing you. It was about flushing me out. They suspected someone was inside their organization, so they targeted you knowing I'd have to respond." "And you didn't," Lena said, anger rising. "You let me get shot. Let people die. Because the mission was more important. Your father understood that. He died for it. You killed him." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Catherine's composure finally cracked, pain flashing across her features. "They killed him. But yes, I could have warned him, could have saved him. But that would have blown my cover, and thousands more would have died." She turned back to the screen. 5 seconds. Lena moved without thinking, diving for the terminal. But Catherine was ready, a concealed pistol appearing in her hand. Mother and daughter faced each other over loaded weapons, 15 years of lies and loss between them. "Don't make me choose between you and the mission," Catherine said. "You already chose, 15 years ago." The upload completed with a soft chime. Around the world, intelligence agencies' secure servers were suddenly flooded with terabytes of data, names, dates, operations, the entire hidden infrastructure of a conspiracy that spanned decades. Catherine lowered her weapon. "It's done. The network is exposed. Every government will be hunting them within the hour." "And you?" Lena asked, her own weapon still raised. "I'm burned. Both sides will want me dead." She pulled out a small device, pressed a button. "But not before I finish this." Explosions rocked the building, not destructive surgical, taking out specific servers, specific records. What are you doing? Erasing the evidence of your father's network. Keller and the others, they need to remain invisible to be effective. The world will know about Phoenix Protocol, but not about the antibodies. It was brilliant and terrible. Catherine had orchestrated everything, the exposure of one network while protecting another, using her daughter as an unwitting catalyst. "You used me," Lena said. "I prepared you, there's a difference." Catherine moved toward the door, but Lena blocked her path. "You're not leaving. You won't shoot your mother." "I don't have a mother. She died in a car accident when I was 8. For the first time, genuine emotion flickered in Catherine's eyes. "Your father said the same thing near the end, that his wife had died long before the car accident, that the mission had killed her. He was right." They stood, frozen weapons drawn, years of pain crystallized into a single moment. Then Reyes's voice crackled over the radio. "Dustline, we've got military vehicles incoming. Looks like half the Pentagon's response force." "They're not here for Phoenix operatives," Catherine said. "They're here for me. Someone leaked my location." "Keen," Lena realized. "She knew you'd come. This is her real plan." Catherine smiled, and for a moment Lena saw her real mother in that expression. My brilliant girl, always seeing the patterns. She pulled out another device, this one larger. "This contains everything your father's real research, the identities of every friendly asset, the financial records that prove who's really behind everything. Take it." "Why?" "Because in 60 seconds I'm going to walk out of here and let them arrest me. I'll confess to everything, being Prometheus orchestrating Phoenix Protocol, all of it. It's the only way to protect the others, to keep your father's network invisible. They'll execute you for treason. Perhaps, or perhaps I'll escape. I've done it before." Catherine pressed the device into Lena's unwilling hand. "There's something else." The Winchester thesis wasn't just about Phoenix Protocol. Your father discovered something bigger, something that goes back decades, maybe longer. "What?" "Look for Project Babylon. It's all in there." She moved past Lena toward the door. "Take care of Keller and the others. They're good people who've sacrificed everything for this." "Mom, wait." Catherine stopped, but didn't turn. "You called me Mom." "Don't read into it." "I love you, Lena. I've loved you every day for 15 years, even when I couldn't show it. Your father loved you too. Everything we did was to give you a world worth living in." Before Lena could respond, Catherine was gone. Walking calmly toward the approaching soldiers with her hands raised. Through the window, Lena watched her mother surrender, saw them force her to the ground, cuff her. Catherine looked up once, meeting her daughter's eyes through the glass, and smiled. Then she was gone, loaded into an armored vehicle that disappeared into the night. "Lena," Mercer said gently, "we need to go. This place is about to be swarming with investigators." She pocketed the device, her mind already racing. Project Babylon, the Winchester thesis, her parents' legacy of secrets and sacrifice. They evacuated through service tunnels, emerging into a Pentagon parking garage where Cross waited with a black SUV. "Your mother," he asked. "Is exactly where she wants to be," Lena replied. "This was all planned. Every move, every revelation." "The data she transmitted is already causing chaos," Cross reported as they drove. 12 governments have arrested suspected conspirators. The network she exposed, it's massive." "But incomplete," Lena said, checking the device her mother had given her. "She only gave them the operational level. The real power structure is still hidden." "In there," Cross indicated the device. "Among other things." She looked at Reyes and Mercer. "We have a choice. We can turn this over, let the official channels handle it. Or we finish what your parents started," Reyes said. "It won't be official. No government sanction, no legal protection. We'd be as rogue as Phoenix Protocol. But more effective, Mercer added, because we'd be invisible. Cross pulled the SUV to the side of the road. I can't officially endorse this, but I can make sure certain investigations go slowly, certain records get lost. Lena made her decision. Keller's network is already in place. My mother made sure they stayed hidden. With this information, we could coordinate them, turn them into what Phoenix Protocol was supposed to be, a genuine safeguard. The antibody, Reyes said. More than that, a new standard for how this kind of warfare is fought. Not with massive conspiracies and shadowy cabals, but with dedicated individuals who choose to stand watch. She opened the device, scrolling through the files. The scope was staggering: financial records going back 50 years, connections between governments and corporations, a web of influence that touched everything from elections to wars. And at the center, Project Babylon. A name, a date, and coordinates in Switzerland. This is bigger than Phoenix Protocol, she said. Bigger than anything we imagined. Then we'd better get started, Mercer said. 6 months later, Lena stood on the same range where it had all began. The bullet holes had been patched, the blood washed away, but she could still see echoes of that morning in every shadow. The official story was that Phoenix Protocol had been a foreign intelligence operation disrupted by alert American forces. Dana Keene had been tried and convicted, sentenced to life in military prison. Lena Phan had escaped during a prisoner transfer. No one knew where she was. But the real work happened in silence. Keller's network, now coordinated and informed, had prevented 3 terrorist attacks, exposed 2 more conspiracy cells, and quietly removed dozens of compromised officials from positions of power. They didn't call themselves anything. They didn't need to. They were simply professionals who'd chosen to stand watch, to be the antibodies in a system constantly under attack. Lena set up a target at 800 meters, the same distance as that impossible shot through the palm fronds. She'd made it once on instinct and adrenaline. Now she practiced it regularly, honing the skill her father had recognized and her mother had weaponized. You know, Reyes said, approaching on fully healed legs, the new SEAL training incorporates your tactics now. They're calling it the Dust Line Protocol, how to turn infrastructure into weapons, how to think beyond conventional responses. They're missing the point, Lena replied, adjusting her scope. It's not about the tactics. It's about seeing what others miss, being invisible until the moment you're not. Speaking of which, Keller intercepted something. Project Babylon is active. Whatever it is, it's moving. Lena took the shot. Perfect hit, despite the coastal wind that would have fooled most shooters. Then I guess we'd better move too. She packed up her rifle, the same MK-11 she'd used that morning. Mercer had made sure she kept it a reminder of how everything had changed in a few violent hours. As they walked back to the command center, Lena thought about her parents. Both had sacrificed everything for their mission, had lived in shadows, and died in secrets. But they'd also given her the tools to finish what they'd started. Project Babylon was out there somewhere. The real power behind Phoenix Protocol, and who knew how many other operations. But now they had something those powers didn't expect: a network of invisible watchers coordinated by someone who'd learned to read patterns in wind and data alike. You ready for this? Reyes asked. I've been ready since the moment that first mortar hit, Lena replied. They entered the command center where Keller waited with his team, the inheritors of her father's vision. On the screens, data flowed patterns and anomalies that might be nothing or might be the next Phoenix Protocol. All right, Lena said, taking her place at the center of it all. Let's write the new standard. The work would never end. There would always be new threats, new conspiracies, new shadows to watch. But that was okay. She'd learned something important from her parents' sacrifice. The price of freedom wasn't just eternal vigilance. It was the willingness of ordinary people to become extraordinary when the moment demanded it. She'd been a maintenance contractor who became a warrior in minutes. Now she was something more, a guardian of the invisible line between order and chaos. The range had taught her to shoot. Phoenix Protocol had taught her to fight. But her parents had taught her the most important lesson. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the battle, but in making sure the right battles are fought. As night fell over its base, Lena opened the files on Project Babylon. Swiss coordinates, financial records, and a single photograph, a building that looked unremarkable except for one detail. In the window, barely visible, was a symbol she recognized. The same symbol her father had drawn obsessively in his final days. The same one her mother had tattooed on her shoulder, hidden beneath years of scar tissue. "Found you," she whispered. The real enemy had finally shown a face. Not a conspiracy or a protocol, but something older, more entrenched. Something that had been shaping world events for longer than anyone suspected. But they'd made one mistake. They'd forced Lena Phan out of invisibility. They'd killed her father, corrupted her mother, and tried to use her as a pawn. Now she was coming for them. Not with an army or official sanction, but with something far more dangerous, a network of invisible guardians who'd learned to turn the system's own weight against itself. The morning that had started with routine range maintenance had led to this, a shadow war fought in conference rooms and server farms, where the ammunition was information, and the casualties were measured in exposed secrets. Lena smiled, thinking of that first shot through the palm fronds, the impossible made possible by seeing what others couldn't. That was their advantage now. While the enemy looked for armies and agencies, she and her network moved unseen, unknown, until the moment they struck. The phone rang. A number she didn't recognize from a country that didn't officially exist in intelligence circles. "Hello, sweetheart," her mother's voice said. "Ready to finish what we started?" Lena looked at her team, saw the determination in their eyes. Phoenix Protocol was dead, but from its ashes something stronger had risen. Not a conspiracy, but a commitment. Not a protocol, but a promise. To stand watch, to see clearly, to act decisively. "We're ready," she said. Through the window, she could see the range where it all began. In a few hours, new recruits would be there training, unaware of the invisible war being fought around them. But if she and her team did their job right, those recruits would never have to know. That was the real victory, not the battles won, but the battles prevented. Not the enemies destroyed, but the innocents protected. Her father had understood that. Her mother, in her own twisted way, had understood it too. Now, it was Lena's turn to write the standard that others would follow invisible, until needed deadly when revealed. The girl who'd been cleaning the range had become the woman who cleaned up the messes others couldn't see. And she was just getting started. The secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Coordinates in Switzerland, a timeline, and 3 words that changed everything. Babylon is moving. Lena stood her team rising with her. No speeches, no dramatics. They all knew what came next. "Wheels up in 30, she said. As they prepared to deploy, Lena took one last look at the range. 6 months ago, she'd been nobody. Now she was exactly what the world needed, someone trained by tragedy, forged by necessity, and invisible by choice. The SEALs had their motto, "The only easy day was yesterday." But Lena had her own, "Precision is knowing when not to shoot." Sometimes the greatest power wasn't in pulling the trigger, but in knowing exactly when to wait, when to watch, and when to strike, with perfect accuracy. Project Babylon had waited decades in the shadows. But shadows were where Lena Phan did her best work. The transport lifted off into the night sky, carrying a team that didn't officially exist toward a threat that nobody else could see. Behind them, the base continued its normal operations, unaware that its safety depended on those who chose to remain invisible. That morning at the range had been the beginning. Tonight was the culmination. And tomorrow the real work would begin. But for now, in this moment, Lena allowed herself one small satisfaction. She'd honored her father's memory, accepted her mother's legacy, and forged her own path between their shadows. The girl who'd just been cleaning the range had become the woman who would clean up the world's most dangerous messes. One precision shot at a time.